And here is another big question. What does the Old Testament say about abortion?
The short answer is nothing. But you're probably looking you're probably looking for a little bit more than that. Um, there is nothing in the Old Testament that explicitly addresses abortion. Um, there are some possibly relevant passages, though, that people bring forward. The main one is in Exodus chapter 21 and verse 22. It says, when people who are fighting injure a pregnant woman so that there is a miscarriage and yet no further harm follows, the one responsible shall be fined what the woman's husband demands, paying as much as the judges determine. If any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. So this passage might suggest that the fetus has a lower status than a person. So the fetus is not treated as being on an equal level as a person, because in that verse, causing a miscarriage requires a fine. But if the woman is harmed, so if the woman is killed, then it's a criminal offence. And people might want to extrapolate from that. But the problem is that's an interpretation of that passage. And in any case, the incident is not talking about intentional abortion, but accidental miscarriage. So it's not like for like. People interpret, for example, Genesis 1:27, where it says, God said, verse 26, God says, let us make man in our image, let us make humanity in our image. And some people would say, well, that underlines the sanctity of life. Human beings created in the image of God. And that was done at their creation, so from the beginning. I think, personally, that misunderstands what the image of God is. I know systematic theologians, of which I am not a member, but I know some systematic theologians make a great deal of the image of God and expand on it greatly. But I think much of that is often done non-contextually as far as Genesis is concerned, because I think Genesis tells us what the image of God is. God says, so God created human beings in his image, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the animal creation. I think that is the definition of what being in the image of God is. The image of God in Genesis, I think, is not so much what we are, but what we do. And what we do is we rule God's creation on his behalf. So as God has just exhibited his authority over creation, he hands that authority to us, and it is human capacity ruling the earth to do so in a way which does honor to God as creator. So being in the image of God, who has just created everything, I don't think is relevant to the question of abortion. It's saying something significant about human beings, but I don't think we can extrapolate for or against abortion from that one statement. Then there are passages like Psalm 139, which talk about, paraphrasing now, that God has known me from my mother's womb, which people take to mean that God has had, or rather the fetus has the function of a person from conception. Is this saying anything definite about the specific issue of abortion? No, well, it isn't saying anything directly. So whatever there is in the Old Testament that might be relevant to the question of abortion, none of it is direct. There's nothing specific about abortion. So this is something that we would need to discuss in the light of the whole revelation of Scripture and work from principles of life, for which we need the New Testament to provide us with a larger context. But simply from Old Testament text, there's nothing explicit on the matter.